Brothers, associates, and collaborators, welcome again. We would like to talk about our key strategies for a dynamic implementation approach for our path of renewal. As you know, our ambition for the path of renewal is that by early 2026, which is next year, and we are fast approaching that, we aim to have made a significant progress in the seven critical domains. And the seven critical domains, I'm sure mostly everyone is aware of, and they are represented in the logo that we use for it's on the right hand side of the slide here. By doing this, by making this progress, we will have continued advancing our journey of renewal together, and we will be ready for a new general chapter. If you recall, the preparation for a general chapter, a new general chapter, was predicated on our making significant progress in our renewal of the congregation. So where are we today? It says March, and we are already April now. So time is moving on. Okay, we've made progress in these areas. We've identified key actions for the three core domains that have been identified across the four provinces. The core domains being spirituality and constitutions, community, apostolic, and mission. Those three core domains have identified actions that would be implemented across all four provinces. For the four supporting domains, which is governance and leadership, formation, finance, and communication. The four supporting domains, the progress has varied. Some actions are in motion while others still need further work that we're developing. So we distinguish here between provincial level actions, and that's actions that require local implementation, and congregation-wide actions that ask for broader collaboration across the congregation. So let me just point out here that there's two levels here, and they are not either or, but often they are both, or they are, yeah, I would say most times they're both. They're actions that need to be worked on and implemented on a local level, and then the congregation-wide that have implications for us because we are not just a local congregation, we are a wider, broader congregation worldwide. So we have these two, if you will, these two motions to ensure that the renewal is truly a shared effort and not just the responsibility of a few or of one locality. Before we step into the implementation phase, it's good that we go back and we reaffirm what lies at the core of the renewal process. Our identity and our vocation as consecrated men, and for associates who are joining us as consecrated men and women who are called to live as brothers of charity or associates as brothers of charity. So that's at the core of the renewal process. We can't forget why we are renewing and why we have come together. So our renewal is a profound spiritual journey one that calls us to rediscover, again, go back and rediscover, deepen, and witness to the grace of our consecration. And it's helpful to remember the three pillars of consecrated life. One, the personal and living relationship with God. And as Vita Consecrata points out to us, our consecration is a response to Christ's call, shaping our lives through the evangelical counsels. It is a radical commitment of love, placing God at the center of our existence. Personal and living relationship with God. The second pillar is the fraternal life in community. We are called to live in community, in communion with our brothers, following the example of the first Christian communities. Our fraternity is a sign of ecclesial communion, where we grow together in faith and mission. Our fraternity is a sign of the ecclesial communion, the community of the church, where we grow together in faith and mission. Faith and mission. I will point out here that the second pillar, when we talk about communion, and we talk about the prayer that we just prayed for the path of renewal, we mentioned specifically strengthening those bonds of communion that we have together. The third pillar is the apostolic mission and witness. Our community life bears fruit in service to those most wounded in their dignity and capacities. We are not simply social workers, but witnesses of Christ's compassion. And many of us have heard this many times. It's good that we go back and we think about this again. We are not simply doing social work, but we are witnesses of Christ's compassion, called to evangelize through our lives. And our congregation as Brothers of Charity has particular focus for those most wounded in their dignity and capacities. So mission is also a pillar of consecrated life. So it's not a mistake that we have one of our core domains as apostolic and mission. So our commitment, to quote again our constitutions, your response to God's call as expressed by the vows is accepted and ratified by the church. In company with your fellow brothers, you realize how faithful God has been in your regard. That's from our constitutions number 12. So as we move forward, we recognize that true transformation, and remember, the core of it is a renewal, an internal renewal. The true transformation of the congregation must take place within our local communities, where our charism is lived on a daily basis. The renewal of the congregation as a whole, as I mentioned, depends on the authenticity of this renewal at the grassroots level, at the local level, in our charism, fraternity, and mission, the core of our religious consecration, as we talked about before. So this renewal starts internally. It has an internal root, and it grows, it takes place within local communities where this charism that we live and we nurture internally is lived on a daily basis. This is a guide for implementation, ensuring that our renewal process is concrete, participatory, and deeply rooted in our vocation. It highlights the foundation of renewal in our consecrated identity, the local community as the central place where transformation must happen, and the concrete steps we are taking to move forward. So, our process, according to the structure of the congregation, would look like this. First, on the community level, that's the heart of the congregation, the local communities of brothers and associate members. The local community is where the real transformation must take place in daily life, shared fraternity, and mission. Community dialogue sessions. We prayed for that in our prayer of renewal. Community dialogue sessions ensure that renewal is rooted in prayer, discernment, and concrete action. Brothers and associate members must take personal and communal responsibility for implementing renewal. Can I read that again? Brothers and associate members must take personal and communal responsibility. We are responsible members of the congregation for implementing renewal. That community level has a connection and flows to a regional level, leadership at the country level. Regional leadership teams provide support, guidance, and oversight to local communities. The regional teams ensure consistency in the renewal process, adapting it to the realities of each place. And there's differences. Let us recognize and celebrate our differences. Not differences that divide, but differences that illuminate and make us an international congregation. The regional teams, leadership, they facilitate communication and learning among local communities. So regional level is a support to the local level. And that regional level flows and connects with the provincial level, continental leadership. Provincial superiors have a more direct responsibility for leading renewal in their provinces. They ensure that the strategies and commitment align with the congregation's vision while remaining contextually relevant. They oversee cross-community and regional collaboration, fostering unity and diversity. Provincials have a supporting role in their provinces. They have a direct responsibility for leading the renewal in their provinces, not doing it all, but supportively leading it all. The doing is a local task. And ensuring that the strategies and commitments align with the congregation's vision. The provincials have a responsibility to keep the vision of the congregation in their sight line. And lastly, it connects with the general administration and the SLT, the servant leadership team. The general administration provides the overall vision, direction, and support for implementation. The servant leadership team, SLT we call it, plays a role in accompanying, inspiring, and guiding the renewal process, ensuring that it remains faithful to the charism, our charism, and effectively implemented at all levels. Together, the general administration and the SLT, the servant leadership team, ensure ongoing discernment, accountability, and communion. May I repeat, the general administration and the SLT ensure ongoing discernment, accountability, and communion, strengthening the renewal journey across the congregation. This is not a one and done affair. This is an ongoing process that involves discernment and accountability and communion. That's part and principles of renewal. And our actions for our renewal process is through the synodal methodology that has been more or less, not more or less, absolutely um, affirmed by the church, by Pope Francis at the end of the the worldwide synod on synodality that concluded in Rome. So our process should mirror the church's synodal process. It's been more or less, the Pope said, this is part and parcel of what the church is. The church is synodal, fostering an environment of deep dialogue, shared discernment, and decision making. It should encourage an interactive process where each step taken leads to reflection and adaptation based on real experiences from the communities. An interactive process, it's a dynamic process. Again, it's not one and done. It's an ongoing way that we should be. We should be as a congregation. The Pope and the Church have said this is the way the Church should be. It should be constantly interactive, reflecting, adapting, listening to experiences from communities. And our congregation should be that kind of ongoing, moving, um, uh, yeah, uh, church. Because as a communion, we are a community, a congregation, we are a small church. Establish a structured method for sharing insights across provinces, fostering mutual learning. Again, you see the dynamics, it's ongoing. So a synodal methodology is an ongoing, it's a way that we come to be as church and as we come to be as congregation. Okay, the dynamic coordination at the servant leadership team level. Okay, the SLT must own, oversee, and stimulate learning while ensuring a flexible yet structured framework. So the SLT has a responsibility for overseeing and stimulating this process renewal and ensuring that we can be flexible. I mean, there's certain adaptations, and you saw the word adaptation previously in this presentation. Um, there's a degree of flexibility and adaptation that is needed as we move along in the process, and generally as we move along in a synodal way. The implementation must not be rigid. thus flexibility. Actions should be reviewed regularly, and feedback mechanisms should ensure adaptability. And then you see it feeds back into cross-provincial collaboration should be promoted to prevent a siloed work. A siloed is where I'm only looking at my own situation, my own local situation, my own provincial situation. We have to avoid that. So cross-provincial collaboration between provinces should be promoted to prevent just looking at my own reality. And this is a dynamic process that keeps going. You see, it was all connected by arrows. Time frame and milestones for implementation. The first evaluation of this implementation will take place at the annual regional superiors meeting in September of 2025, allowing for adjustments. We are in April. So if we look at this, we're talking April, May, June, July, August, September, 6 months. So we have to, we have to get busy with some implementation. And the first evaluation takes place in September. A broader review of the achievements will take place at the beginning of 2026, which is not quite 12 months, but we're talking about maybe more closer to 9 or 10 months. However, given the scope of the program of renewal, the general chapter team must integrate this process into their preparation for long-term sustainability. This program of renewal will not take place in 6 months, 10 months, 1 year. It is something that should be integrated into the planning of a general chapter. So if we're going to approach a general chapter, the planning team for the general chapter should integrate this process of renewal into their planning because it has long-term sustainability aspects. This is how we will go to the future. And we won't necessarily be at the same place at the same time in all of the domains. So it's an ongoing process that should be taken to a chapter. 2 levels of implementation, global and local. And we've talked about or we've implied this earlier in this webinar. The renewal process operates at 2 interconnected levels. Again, they're not separated. Ensuring that strategic planning is effectively translated into concrete actions at the community level. So the global implementation is led by structured teams, focusing on reflection, study, and expert consultation to develop guidelines, policies, and frameworks that support decision-making within the general administration. It's a lot of words there, but the emphasis there is on structured teamwork. And that's at the general administration level or at the global level, we call it. The local implementation, where renewal becomes a lived experience, is shaped by local realities and regional priorities. Here, the commitment to consecrated life is deepened, strengthened, and contextualized. Clearly defining these 2 levels ensures that the renewal process remains both visionary and practical. Visionary, but also practical, related to the lived experience. Fostering engagement, responsibility, and long-term sustainability. You will see these words coming back again and again: engagement, dialogue, responsibility, responsible membership, and long-term sustainability. That we're looking long-term. What will our future look like? What is our role in the future? So let's talk about global implementation. At the global level, the renewal process is guided by dedicated teams that ensures structured reflection, consultation, and decision support. Each of these teams is sponsored by a provincial superior or a member of the general administration, reinforcing accountability and leadership commitment. Again, accountability is a big word in our process. Accountability. I, me, John, I am accountable to you for my leadership. And you have to hold me accountable for the leadership that I exercise. And the accountability goes back and forth between each one of us. We are accountable to each other as responsible members of the congregation. On the global scene, the structure and the leadership of the global teams are as they are listed here. Governance and leadership team is led, the leader is Brother Venance, and the sponsor is myself, Brother John. The formation team is led by the leader, Brother Victor Marino Conde, and the sponsor is Brother Gerard, the Provincial of Africa. The communications team leader is Brother Alain, and the sponsor is Brother Jimmy from the General Administration. Finance team leader is Brother Ernest, and the sponsor is Brother John O'Shea from the General Administration. The core team leader is Brother Jean-Jacques, and the sponsors are Brother Adrian, Provincial of Asia, and Brother Luc Van Dyke, Provincial of Europe. They're the people responsible for those global teams. So this is our proposed standard scenario for concrete action at the community level. On the one side there, while global teams must set the framework for decision-making, the true renewal happens again in local communities where consecrated life is lived and shared daily. So at the local level, local superiors and regional leaders play a crucial role in ensuring that renewal is not just a strategy, a one-time strategy, but a true revitalization of our vocation as brothers of charity. Each province, using the consolidated action document, and we have a document that looks like this, and the local priorities, the consolidated action document and the local priorities will review and adapt its renewal plan with the provincial council. And this will be supported by Brother Jimmy, who is the process coordinator. Let me say this again. The local superiors and the regional leaders will, in their province, use the consolidated action document and the local priorities. So this consolidated action document asks that you relate it to the local priorities, the local reality in your regions. And they'll review and adapt its renewal plan with the provincial council, supported by Brother Jimmy, process coordinator. So there's actions locally, provincially, provincial councils, and then an action, a support from the SLT, this servant leadership team in the person of Brother Jimmy, process coordinator. Let's talk a bit about local implementation. This is transformation within communities. First topic, community dialogue sessions. Organized and facilitated regularly by the local superior. Facilitated, an important word, and hopefully as the SLT and the sponsors, we can talk about how to facilitate community dialogue. And regularly, you see that's bolded word, regular community dialogue sessions by the local superior, focused on topics from the list of action points for the provinces. Again, we need to regularly have facilitated dialogue in our communities. And the topic list of actions come from that document. And that document is adapted by action points from your provinces, our provinces. Excuse me. Participants, mandatory, all local brothers. If I say I am going to be a member of the congregation of the Brothers of Charity, I assume a personal responsibility to participate in that. I am not a member of the Brothers of Charity strictly for myself. I am a member for and in community. And I have a responsibility to participate in community. So participants mandatory for all local brothers, optional for associate members, staff, co-workers, and volunteers. Each community has to say, are there other people who are integrated, part of our community? And they should participate in these dialogue sessions, or in this particular dialogue session. It's something that we have as a richness in our congregation. A lot of collaborators, a lot of staff, volunteers, a lot of associate members. That richness should be brought into dialogue on certain points. And special guests invited when needed for expertise or inspiration. We have to acknowledge we do not have every capacity, every piece of knowledge within ourselves. So we need to embrace and welcome and be humble enough to ask for need for expertise and inspiration from time to time. It is an enrichment when we go outside of ourselves and ask for some input from people with expertise or people who can inspire. Third, the process and the implementation steps. Sessions must become a standard practice, continuing beyond the implementation phase. As I said, this renewal process is a blueprint for us for how we can, what we want to be. What does our congregation want to look like in the future going forward? It should be a congregation where dialogue and discussion and inclusion of people in dialogue is what we are. It's part of who we are. Topics from the list of action points are covered systematically. So in the provincial teams who help adapt to the local realities, there will be a systematic covering of action points. Participants should come prepared so that we have meaningful dialogue, which we prayed for in our prayer, meaningful dialogue and actions. That was part of our prayer at the beginning. So what we want is meaningful discussions, meaningful dialogue. You have to prepare. You have to I think we all have to say, okay, what do I need to reflect? I need to pray. I need to come with something to share in a meaningful dialogue. The sessions lead to concrete and specific actions, both for the community and individual brothers. We're not just gathering to chat, 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 chat without purpose. The purpose is concrete and specific actions for the community and maybe also for us as individual brothers and associate members. We have to follow up on implementation that occurs in subsequent sessions. So follow up is also important. We can decide to do, we can decide concrete actions, but we also have to follow up on implementation. Individual brothers are encouraged and coached to deepen their personal commitment as brothers of charity. First point, this process is rooted in our commitment. And we have to continue to deepen the commitment, to purify motives, to look for how we can grow in our commitment as brothers of charity. Over the years, we grow and we look for ways to continue to grow. And we encourage one another to grow and to deepen. 4 insights and conclusions are recorded and shared, fostering cross-community and provincial learning. An important point here, that we have some way of recording insights and conclusions, because we can then share them between communities and ultimately across provinces. I may not be able to be present in your meetings, in your provinces, in your local communities, but I may be able to share some of this of our deliberations in our locals with your province. And then we can discover that maybe between our provinces, we can learn something and we can understand something that we did not understand before. So once things are recorded and shared, there's a dynamic that can begin to happen across the congregation. Creating a culture of open dialogue. Big topic here. A session must be inviting, reflective, respectful, and courageous. Reflective, inviting, respectful, and courageous. It has to be a safe space where we feel safe to open and to share. And that means courageous. But it also means being respectful to one another as we speak. And speaking in a reflective way and listening to the others. And inviting, the leaders must be inviting others to share. But the atmosphere shouldn't be, should be open and inviting and not necessarily a combative or a kind of thing. We have to share reflectively, yes. Most of all, respectfully. The goal is to reinforce a way of being and doing that aligns with the identity of the Brothers of Charity. Again, let's look at how we want to be. What do we want to be in the future? What do we want to look like as Brothers of Charity? Do we want to look as people who are inviting, people who are reflective, people who are respectful of one another and listening to one another, and people who are courageous in sharing with one another and in doing. We want to be that, then we have to start to be it now. So that's the end of our presentation. Um, it's it's not complicated. It's rather simple. It happens on two levels, globally and locally. And there are guidelines and there are supports for the implementation on those two levels. And the SLT, the Servant Leadership Team, remains in place and ready to support when necessary through their sponsors or even through anybody on the team. Brother Jimmy, as a process coordinator, is keenly aware of um, our role to support the implementation of the renewal process and the action plans. At this point, I think we're open to a few questions if anyone wants to um, give us a few questions. I know Brother Jimmy is kind of behind the scenes here in Nairobi, so he can let me know when there are questions and how we're going to field the questions. If you have a question, please do intervene or raise your hand. I guess it's hand raising, but I should be looking for you. Ambrose, if you unmute, I see you, but I don't hear you yet. Ambrose, are you there?